Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel for some OB22 data mining that we have to go over here. We've got some Artio and Daji ability information, some Skadi potential, Skadi soon is what the title says, as well as some other stuff about what might be coming to the game relatively soon. As always, don't 100% trust data mining. It is accurate a lot of the time, but it can be inaccurate. It has been in the past. I'm sure you guys might have seen on Titan Talk recently with Ratatoska. You know, they thought Ratatoska was going to be coming to the game, but it turns out they were just utilizing Ratatoska to do fur texturing for other gods. So don't take it as gospel, but it's generally a good guide in terms of what is coming to the game soon, especially with stuff like skin information. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the data mining that we have for today. So in terms of cosmetics, there's not anything super new from what we knew about before. If you've been keeping up with my last data mining video, there was a bunch of new cosmetics that appeared in mining for OB21. And basically the only updates we have here are like some model images for those, some stuff like card effects and new Pele skin, the Fenrir skin. The one major new thing that we have in this mining that we didn't know about before is a Saga skin is potentially coming to the game. They did say on Titan Talk recently that they've been working on a new Saga, and would make sense. He's a pretty popular god. You can do cool skins for him. I don't think we have any like models or any other information on what the Saga is going to be like, but yeah, it looks like there's going to be a Saga coming at some point relatively soon. Usually, I think with the last Sagas, once they appeared in data mining, they were within a couple of patches, so I would expect probably latest you're going to see this like OB24 for the Saga. And yeah, we got some images down here of some of the skins that are coming to the game soon. These were in previous data mining, I think, but just in case you missed that video, there's an Anubis Christmas skin that's going to have a bunch of prisms. A brand new Shibalanke skin, I think it's called Darkest Night. Danzaburo Polar skin that is probably going to come in some kind of Christmas event, I would imagine. Osiris Black Knight and Noble Knight are also in mining. They, I think, are going to have prisms as well. And then the rest of these are stuff that we already knew about before. Still no updates on the Elemental Gold Fury variants, unfortunately. I like to check up on that basically every time there's data mining posters because it seems like a really cool system, but it seems like it's been shelved at this point. You know, maybe they'll bring it to the game at some point, but clearly this was, you know, potentially going to get worked on, and then they decided to go more in the direction of Moonlight Face instead of this. Definitely something I think they should look at in the future, though. I think this will be a really interesting mechanic. Basically, a bunch of different Elemental Gold Furies all have unique effects. Kind of like Smite 1 only and Primal Fury, but like a more expanded version of that system, basically. Moving on to God release schedule, though, obviously Daji is now 100% confirmed. Artio and Nut are now 99% confirmed because they were essentially leaked on Titan Talk by Kilgoon. So after Daji, we're going to have Artio and then Nut, and then starting from OB26, because these will be the last 3 gods of the year. They're taking a small break over Christmas. Essentially, we're going to have one patch missing over Christmas. So like once the final patch of the year drops, it's going to be 4 weeks until we get our next update instead of 2 weeks. And then for the first god of 2026, Discordia is currently looking the most likely based on data mining, which I think would make sense. We're pretty much due a mage at that point. You know, it's been a while since ESET by the time this god will release, so Discordia there makes sense. Chiron also appearing as a 25% chance. This one's interesting given it will be so close to the release of Nut. You know, this might not be the exact order that things are released in. You know, Chiron clearly has had something done with him, or the data mining thinks something has been done with him. But I wouldn't expect him to release directly after Discordia, just given how close that is to Nut's release. You know, Hunter, Mage, Hunter doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. If anything, I would expect them to release more mages than, you know, would be expected, because currently they're trying to do one god of every class before they get round to doing another rotation of one god of every class, or at least one god of every role. I think Artio is coming essentially as the solo laner, so like we're not going to be getting a warrior here, we're going to be getting Artio instead because she's generally a more solo prevalent god than support. There's some information on her further down as well that suggests she might be getting a support aspect that we'll get to in a second, but yeah, it seems like Artio is coming in the solo lane spot as opposed to bringing a warrior. And to be honest with this, it was kind of like pick your poison, because they said it was going to be a female, so it was either Artio or it was Nike. Those are like the only 2 female solo laners left to port, so yeah, Artio or Nike, they're both annoying, so whatever, pick your poison. But yeah, I would be surprised for Chiron coming directly after Discordia. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. If this was like another mage, I could almost see it, because like they do have a lot of mages left to port. There's like 20 mages left to port and like 10 of each other class pretty much. So at some point they are going to have to start porting like 2 mages per class rotation, just because like they've got so many left to do. So definitely expect that at some point going forward, you know, as we approach, you know, most of the roster being ported, you know, sometime next year, they will probably start doing multiple mages per class rotation. Something they could do with that as well is port the mages that aren't traditional burst mages in that. So, you know, you would have a traditional burst mage, but then also port something like, maybe not Freya, because they probably want to do something else with Freya and not port her directly as is. But, you know, port something like Olarun or Kronos as like an ADC mage, or port, you know, Ao Kuang as an assassin mage. You know, something rather than just a traditional burst mage, and then they can get those other ones in with a little bit of playstyle variety. Balder, no updates yet, still at a 40% chance, suggested as a mage by data mining. This will, in theory, be the next brand new god that we get after Hasta was delayed. Still no updates, though. And then gods who have received work, but we're not really sure if they're coming. Skadi seems to be receiving work. She's had a lot of animations done, apparently. So again, like I said, don't take this as gospel. It could just be that they're using Skadi's animations for some other god that is in development, or they're using, you know, like Calder's animations for some other pet, you know, fucking Erlangshen or something. I don't know. It wouldn't be Erlangshen, probably. Everyone hates him and he's not popular. But for example, that could be something they were doing, you know, kind of taking some of Skadi's animations and animating Erlang's dog based on it or something like that. That's probably not actually a realistic possibility, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that because Skadi is receiving some animation work, Skadi is definitely coming. But yeah, it definitely seems possible that she might be coming at some point soon, and I wouldn't be too surprised, honestly. Again, like, you know, Chiron, Hunter, Skadi, Hunter, Nut, Hunter, like, there seems to be way too many Hunters here, so these might be more spread out than this looks. I wouldn't expect us to get, you know, Hunter here, one patch, Hunter here, one patch, Hunter here. Like, that's just not going to be likely, I don't think. But I wouldn't be surprised if Skadi was brought over sooner rather than later. You know, she has some haters. I think she's a bad design in general. They could definitely do some work on her, but she's very popular. You know, we've seen this with stuff like Afro and Nuwa. They got ported early, even though a lot of people hate them. They're popular, so they ported them early. And that's the key difference between these gods like Skadi, Afro, and Nuwa, and some other gods that are hated but are much less popular, like Vamana, Bakekujira, stuff like that. Still no updates on Hasta, King Arthur, Ratatoska, Horus, and Shiva. These had all appeared in data mining before, but it seems like they've been shelved or delayed. Obviously, King Arthur's been delayed. We know that. Ratatoska apparently was never worked on in the first place, and that was just a bit of a quirk of data mining. And then Horus and Shiva, they haven't been mentioned at all, but they did appear in data mining at one point. We've also got a couple of models. These look like just Smite 1 imported models. The team said recently on Titan Talk that they have imported basically all of these Smite 1 god models into Smite 2. They're not like rigged or functional, but they have imported the models. And so we can see here Nut, Discordia, and Skadi's models there. Maybe like they've had some work done on them, and that's why they're here. I don't know. Still no Balder kit updates yet. Daji, there's not too much point going over all this because she was available on the PTS, so we've seen a lot of what Daji is going to be. We've seen what her aspect is going to be and stuff, so there's not much point in going over this. Artio has some kit information though, which there's a couple of interesting things we can pull from this. First off, her 1A and her 1B both have both kinds of scaling. So, you know, if we thought maybe Artio might be like full int scaling in the druid form and full strength scaling in the bear form, that's not going to be the case. It looks like she's going to have both kinds of scaling in both forms. It is kind of weird that the strength scaling is higher on both of these abilities. You know, if they were going to do it this way, I would expect it to kind of be like Aladdin in a way, and that like she has good scalings of both in both forms, but the bear form has more strength scaling and the druid form has less, and more int scaling. Like, that would make sense to me. But again, these are probably just like temporary numbers. They might be getting updated. And I think this makes sense as well. Like, I don't think a god stance switcher where one stance is one scaling and one stance is the other would ever work, because like, you know, you're just hampering yourself there if you try and build hybrid. You know, any strength you build is only scaling half your kit. Any int you build is only scaling half your kit. So like, it wouldn't really work. So I think it makes sense to do it this way. There's also some aspect stuff though. Talents is the internal name for aspect. So anytime you see talent in data mining or the files or anything like that, talent means aspect. This will add bleed damage to the 4B, the 1B, the bear swipe. So I'll add bleed damage to it in the aspect, which is interesting. And the 2 in the aspect is going to have a heal attached to it, and also some damage, apparently. Maybe it's going to make her into, like, a healer mage or something, because it's adding damage, but it's also adding healing to the bear raw. So maybe, like, you inspire your allies, you heal them, maybe you buff them or something like that. So it seems like maybe a support aspect, but also, like, they're adding a lot of damage with the aspect as well, so I'm not sure. And then there's not too much else here, really. It's just, like, kind of standard stuff. No +1s visible yet. Movement speed 100 to 300%. Is clearly not accurate on her ultimate. She does not give her anywhere near that much movement speed. But yeah, some RTO information there, which is kind of interesting. She's going to be full hybrid scaling, and she's going to have an aspect that, you know, looks like it might be support, given the fact that it adds a heal to her 4B, but it could also be like mid-mage RTO or something like that, but just has an additional heal. Maybe she plays a little bit like an Aphrodite or a Hell from mid or something like that. But yeah, interesting for sure. So some RTO information, Skadi potentially coming, some skin information, all that kind of stuff. Definitely leave your thoughts down below on this data mining. Excited for any of the stuff coming to the game soon. And I will catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.